Scooby-Doo and Batman, the Brave and the Bold was pretty good. It's probably not the response everyone was expecting to hear to a movie capitalizing on the brand recognition of Batman and Scooby-Doo, but just hear me out. I'm not the biggest protester of crossovers. I think the key to enjoying a crossover is just not to take it too seriously. I'm referring to both the audience and the creators. I've stated in the past that I'm still capable of enjoying these straight-to-DVD Scooby-Doo movies. It's not something I see every day of my life, so as long as it recaptures the spirit of the original, I'll have a good time. As for Batman the Brave and the Bold, I'll admit I haven't seen the show in quite a long time, so I don't remember my experience with it and how the show was like, but I do remember that it was less serious than some of the darker incarnations of Batman, and given how Scooby-Doo is also a pretty zany franchise, both series definitely fit the silliness requirement. And as for whether or not it makes sense for them to have a crossover, both shows have to do with investigation, and although Batman fought against magical beings in some Justice League stories, in his realms the stories and characters are more grounded in reality. So right now I totally see potential for a crossover, and call me a gullible fanboy all you want, but I like the Mystery Inc. gang and Batman enough that it would be pretty cool to witness them meeting each other. But let's get down to the actual review. Now, the Scooby-Doo characters had designs that were more faithful to the original series, much like pretty much every other Scooby-Doo movie released recently, while the Batman characters had the Brave and the Bold art style, and I was impressed at how both art styles managed to blend with each other. I guess it helps that both series are animated by the same studio. The movie managed to be faithful to the spirit of Scooby-Doo, like how Shaggy sarcastically points out the risk and danger they're in, how Shaggy and Scooby cleverly make excuses for them to eat, how Scooby-Doo steals Shaggy's food, how Velma will obviously try to figure out Batman's identity. The characters and their dynamics felt very much familiar, and it was fun seeing them work alongside Batman, who was very well performed by Diedrich Bader, even if I couldn't help myself from hearing hostile gutter whenever Batman opened his mouth. The movie also cleverly made fun of a lot of common Scooby-Doo antics, which were pretty much fan service for the Scooby-Doo fans. There was also a chase scene around the middle of the movie that did feel a bit stretched out, which was mostly to feature villains like Joker for fan service, even though he wasn't that relevant to the story, which I can definitely picture people being bothered by that, but I was mostly pleased by it. I did also notice that Aquaman was portrayed as this unreliable dipstick, which I'm not sure if this is an accurate portrayal of his character in the Brave and the Bold television series, but I thought it was a funny portrayal because that's how I see Aquaman in general. In terms of the action, there were some fights with basic choreography that looked alright, and there are also some single frame flashy punching shots with the character slowly moving to emphasize impact, clearly inspired by comic books. The story was pretty interesting with the introduction of an unfamiliar villain, and it was intriguing seeing Batman facing a new challenge while also dealing with guilt-driven issues from the past that are haunting him, and this time it doesn't have to do with his parents, which is refreshing. Also, spoiler alert I guess, although now that we reached this far I do want to put a spoiler warning because I want to address stuff that's related to the ending, so if you're interested in watching the movie, hit this minute mark, you've been warned. Okay, so the Riddler's plan involved Basil Karlo creating a clone of Riddler and pretend to be him in Arkham Asylum, which I can buy into that given how Basil is an actor, but he can also somewhat mimic his voice. Batman never noticed that his voice sounded a little bit off. I understand that Batman was a little distracted with the Crimson Cloak, but given how he's been fighting against the Riddler for a while, he could have easily noticed that it sounded a bit off. But even if I could forgive that and assume that either Basil is too much of a talented actor and mimicker and that Batman was just too distracted, how did the Riddler mimic the Question's voice? He wasn't behaving exactly like him, which was how Batman and Aquaman's suspicions came to be, but the fact that they didn't notice that it sounded differently, and I don't think they even switched the voice actor for authenticity, it's kind of hard for me to buy into this. Another nitpick I have is that the Scooby gang ended up wearing costumes from Robin, Batgirl, and other sidekicks, which was pretty obvious that they were going to do that if you ask me, but what bugged me even more was their reason. They wanted to disguise themselves so that the cops wouldn't spot them, but if you're wearing costumes from people who are associated with Batman, who's also wanted by the police, your chances of getting caught by the cops aren't any lower. Hell, if they have your profiles, they could easily identify you, especially if you're walking in group, since your disguises aren't really that cryptic. But at the end of the day, I ended up enjoying this movie. I can say that the people who worked on this had a ton of fun, and so did I. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bye for now.